There's nothing deadly about slow zombies. The zombies weren't the worst part of the zombie apocalypse. The thing was, they were slow. A toddler can crawl faster than these zombies could walk. No, the worst part was all the nutjobs who believed this was the end times. They went around killing anyone they thought was infected, including tons of people who weren't. That's how my dad died. He had a stroke, he was outside in our driveway, he could barely move, and the zombie patrol saw him and shot him. No hesitation. If they had just called a fucking ambulance, my father would still be alive. My mother took it the hardest. She had come home to find him like that in the driveway. After that, for weeks, she was practically catatonic. The zombie was bumping into our front door and she didn't even think, she just answered. By the time I heard screaming, it was too late. I managed to kill the zombie, but she'd been bit. I know it was stupid, but I had just lost my dad. I didn't want to lose my mom too. I locked her in our basement. For weeks I would check the news praying the government would find a cure. Months passed. Almost all the zombies in the country were killed. New waves would come. The zombies would be exterminated. It went on like that for months. Then my prayers were answered. The government released a message on the TV saying there was a cure. They had set up a hospital site. Wrangling my mother was easy. I tied her up in the car and left. Once at the hospital, soldiers helped me lead my mother to an exam room. I wanted to go in with her to be the first thing she saw when she came back to life, but a doctor sat me down outside the room. The reason these waves keep happening is because people are hiding their relatives, hoping for a cure. Eventually they get sick too and spread the infection. Don't be alarmed, there is no cure. 2 gunshots sounded from the inside of the exam room. The only way to end this pandemic is to kill all the infected. I'm sorry, your mother died a long time ago, we just finished it. Rage seethed in me. Let me say goodbye. Son, she's gone. You fucking lied to get me here. You killed my mom. Let me say goodbye. The doctor nodded and the soldier opened the door for me. I entered. I was alone. I decided I didn't want to be part of the living anymore. All of them were liars and murderers. I stuck my fingers in my mom's blood and rubbed it on my gums. I needed to bite that asshole doctor quickly before I slowed down. But something was different. The infection had mutated. I felt myself getting stronger. The last thing I remember is sprinting at top speed and ripping that lying doctor to pieces. Bye bye. 100 years too late. Time travel took scientists generations to complete, but we finally had created something capable of going forward and backwards through time. And human testing was next. As the very first person to achieve time travel, I was nervous. I waved goodbye to all my friends, smiled for the cameras, and stepped into the time machine. It was a large gray box covered with wires and gizmos, each taking years to perfect. I set my destination exactly 100 years forward, and as the door closed and energy surged, I closed my eyes. And when I reopened them, I was in hell. Everything in the future was covered in a fine layer of ash, burnt bodies, and the horrid smell of smoke littered the area. Everybody was dead. Everything was dead. In my terror, I tried to reach for the controls to go straight back home. However, I was horrified to find they too were smoking, burnt up from the force of traveling through the timeline. I was devastated. I had seemingly skipped straight through the apocalypse and landed into a realm where everything was gone. And I had no way to get back, to warn anyone. What could I do? I traversed the area for what felt like weeks. I could barely find any trace of what was once here, other than the blackened debris and corpses. I theorized that it was from a meteor impact or maybe a solar flare, but I just couldn't tell. I realized I had to return home somehow. I had my own part in building the time machine. I could fix it if I tried. I couldn't even remember how much time it took me. How little I slept, how little I ate from the emergency rations I thankfully had the intelligence to bring with me. At long last, I saw a flicker of life come back to the scathed controls. Gasping, I ran inside the time machine without a second thought and plotted my destination with shaky hands. Over 100 years ago, plus 30 minutes. If I had just 30 minutes, I could warn everyone, warn myself of what I saw in the future. As the door closed and the energy surged, I closed my eyes, and when I reopened them, I was in hell. Another scorched landscape, another grisly sight, but how? How could the apocalypse still be here? Hadn't I traveled through time properly? I looked down at the bodies and my blood ran cold. Cameras, in ruins, yes, but I could barely recognize the debris. They were the cameras the news used to record me as I left my timeline. Possibly enough to kill a planet on impact. And I fell to my knees and I began to sob as I realized that I could never return home if I tried. Because I was the apocalypse. Oh, no! The evil twin. I'm the real one, shouted the man who could be Henry at me. No, I'm the real one. The man you married. The other one who could also be Henry exclaimed. I looked back and forth at them, hunting rifle at the ready. The news had warned us about duplicates showing up, but we never thought it would happen to us. Henry insisted I learn how to use the gun he had bought. Even though he knew I hated the idea of guns, looking between them, they both had the same haircut, same clothes, same stupid peekaboo pin-up necktie I always asked him to get rid of. Same eyes, filled with scorn, same voice, sounding angry at me taking so long to decide. I took a deep breath and I tried to steady my grip. Damn it, Emily, can't you tell your husband from a fake? The first one yelled. The second one looked like he was going to yell as well, then spoke in a soft voice I hadn't heard in years. I won't ask you to make Salisbury steak ever again. I know you hate it. I'll stop comparing you to my mother. That's not fair to you. I'll apologize to Glenn about kicking him out after he came out to us. I'll work on being a better person, a better father, a better husband, please? You idiot, the first one cried out in joy. I had heard the duplicates were weak, but I didn't think you'd be that weak. No strength in you, and now Emily knows which one of us is the real one. I blinked and slowly nodded.
Yes, I do. I know which one is my real husband.
And then I shot him. The duplicate winced at the sound, looking like he was expecting to be the one shot. He glanced over and then let out a deep breath. He stood up and looked at me with concern as I threw the gun to the ground. He came over and put his hands on my shoulders and asked in a voice I had longed to hear once again, "Are you all right?" I nodded again, shaking, and looked at him.
I'll report you if you've been lying about the changes you'll make. I can't imagine I'll be the first one to have made the mistake of shooting the wrong one.
The duplicate shook his head and smiled warmly. No, of course not. It's still risky, but so much easier for us when we become people that the old version won't be missed. And we can always chalk up the change to having a different perspective after such an ordeal. He took off his tie and grimaced at it. Then he threw it to the ground. No one has complained so far.
Look at me. Sure, I'm the captain now.